What is going on, guys? Thank you for entering the chamber once again. Today we're kicking off our second hero class, taking a look at All Might 6. There's been a lot of All Mights already released in this game, and All Might 6 is just one of the newest ones to come out. And today we're going to look and see if All Might 6 can live up to the hype of being the bearer of One for All, or if he should have passed off that quirk to Deku. We're going to look at the character, all the cards that came out with the new set, for specifically All Might 6. And I'm going to talk about how good I think the cards are and how competitive I think all of these cards are, kind of in aggregate. There's a lot to get into, so let's kick it off with the character. All Might 6 is a 6-hand, 27 health character with 2 enhances and a response. First enhance, discard the top card of your deck. This punch or fury attack gets plus X damage, where X equals the block modifier of the discarded card. All Might's attacks are going to be relatively big. You know, I think on average you can be expecting about probably +2, maybe +3, depending on the block modifiers and how you build your deck. And that is like a significant amount of damage to give to attacks. But usually to actually push damage through, you want to pump speed and not damage. So I think as long as like your opponent can maintain your blocks, this enhance is not the best. I mean, free damage is free damage, of course, but we're going to need something else to kind of help push these attacks through. Enhance, once per turn, remove 1 momentum, add the top card of your discard pile to your hand. This is probably the best part of this character, actually. The fact that you can just like randomly pick up, you know, any random card that you're missing or looking for to, maybe you need a new block zone, maybe you just like need a specific card that you've checked. There's a lot of ways, specifically in All Might, that you can kind of manipulate this, either by milling cards or by using other effects in the deck. So I think this is like a very good enhance, and this is probably the best part about this character to me. Response commit. After you block an attack, draw 2 cards and then discard 1 card. My problem with this character's gimmick is that for me, I think you should probably just play All Might 3 over this guy. They have very similar symbols. They both care about the same keywords. They both check for punch and or fury. And they even do somewhat similar things. You know, they both draw 2 cards. Granted, All Might 6 has a discard attached. They both pump punches and furies. They're both 6-hander characters. Like, there's a lot of overlap between these two. The thing is that with All Might 3, your health is a little bit higher at 30/27. Your draw 2 is unconditional. You do have to commit a foundation for it, but you can do this anytime you want, which is kind of an upside. And your ability to pump stats with All Might 3 is significantly scarier because you can pump speed, and the pump is based on the number of cards in your opponent's hand, which forces your opponent to do things they otherwise wouldn't, usually discarding blocks left and right, reducing the number of cards in their hand, which then means they're unable to defend themselves against your attacks because they don't have blocks. And All Might 6 doesn't really do that. I want to like this character, and the momentum fetch to get something out of your bin is something unique that he does, and that is useful. I just don't know if that's enough to justify this character. But let's take a look at his attacks and see how the rest of this deck lines up. Next up, we have Carolina Smash. Carolina Smash is a 4 difficulty, 3 control with a 2 mid block. It's a 4 mid for 3 with Breaker 1, Punch, and EX2. Enhance, at the top card of your discard pile is a foundation. This attack gets +1 speed and +1 damage. Deadlock Enhance, destroy a rival foundation. I think Carolina Smash is just a little too boring of a card to see any kind of like actual serious play. Like, even if we just give it that first enhance like all the time, this is like a 5 mid for 4 with no abilities besides like a Deadlock and EX2, I guess. This is just a little on the blank side for most decks to look at when you consider the very high attack quality that we already have in this game. So I would be surprised if this card sees like a lot of registry beyond, you know, people experimenting with it because it's a new card. Okay, next up we have Counter Smash. This is a 4 difficulty, 3 control with a 3 mid block. It's a 3 high 4 with Punch and Fury. Enhance, add 1 card from your stage to the top of your deck. This attack gains stun 1. This is kind of like a poor man's Harden Jab already. It's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from this card. Like, it gets stun 1, which is neat, but just how Harden Jab helps kind of smooth out your checks and alleviates difficulty is basically a 3 difficulty move. Counter Smash just makes you check a 5 at the price of debuilding you, which is a cost. Deadlock Enhance. Add 1 card with the word Smash in its name from your discard pile to your hand. Again, we have another decent Deadlock here, but there's not many games that are going into Deadlock, so I don't know if that's enough to warrant this. Overall, I think if you're on good, I just don't see you ever playing this card over things like Harden Chop or Jab if you need a good punch that also helps smooth out your turns. If you're on all or order, you might want to look at a copy of this to help guarantee that your follow-up attacks check 5s. But long term, I just don't know if this card sees a lot of play. I think you can usually be better. I think there's usually better things that you can be doing. Moving right along, we have Final Smash. This is a 6 difficulty, 3 control with a 1 mid block. It's a 5 high for 6 with Punch and Fury. So we're off to a good start. If your rival has 8 or more foundations, this attack gets -2 difficulty. That's kind of neat. We've already seen an effect like this on Wind Up Punch, so seeing this again is another just kind of neat tool for decks that go bigger but don't necessarily push themselves into deadlock. Enhance, add 1 card from your discard pile to the top of your deck. If you have a lot of card draw, you can do goofy stuff where you can like play a Final Smash on a 4, load a Final Smash, draw a Final Smash, load a Final Smash, draw a Final Smash, and keep playing this like strings of Final Smashes. And that's kind of like a best case scenario. I think on average this card's not that great. Like on 2 of its symbols, it competes with Wind Up Punch, which is a very similar move, except it's packing Stun 2 and a beefy, powerful 3, which means it gets to really big damage values. And the Stun 2 is, most situations, better than the 5 speed. And now granted, you do get to add a card from your discard pile to the top of your deck, and there's a couple ways you can take advantage of that. Whether you want to like set up future checks, or if you want to set up like attack strings by loading attacks and then drawing them. There are neat things you can do with this card, and I think people are going to experiment with it. But I also think that as we go into the League of Villains format, this is a card that's going to kind of slowly make its way out of lists for, again, things with higher card quality. And as an aside, this is supposed to be, like, this is the moment where he hits all for one with the United States of Smash, but this card is called Final Smash. I really hope down the road we get, like, an actual United States of Smash. I really hope this isn't, like, our United States of Smash stand-in. Okay, next up we have Intimidating Charge. This is a 3 difficulty, 3 control with a 2 low block. It's a 2 mid for 3 with Slam and Fury, and 2 enhances. Enhance at the top card of your discard pile is an attack. This attack gets +2 speed. I guess that makes it like a 4 mid for 3 occasionally. You're not really going to want to like pitch attacks with this character. I mean, you're probably going to get them just off of like all of the discarding and milling, but I don't know how often that's going to come up. And then enhance, discard the top card of your deck. If this attack is blocked by a foundation, look at the top card of your deck. I know I've been saying this a lot about All Might's attack lineups, but this is just another card that I feel like won't cut the mustard long term. I think in general, we just have better stuff you can be doing on a lot of these symbols. Like, I get that this is like a 3 difficulty move, so expectations need to be a little bit lower with a 3 difficulty move, but I just don't think this is worth like the actual slot in your deck most of the time. Maybe if we get someone that cares a lot about like slams and furies on these symbols, maybe, but I'd be surprised if this ends up being like a competitive staple. Alright, next up we have Knee Smash. This is a 4 difficulty, 3 control with a 2 high block. It's a 1 high 6 with Kick and Fury. Enhance, remove 1 foundation. At the top card of your discard pile is a foundation, build it. This is a incredible enhance that we have so many ways to take advantage of. We can pitch cards and then build it with this enhance. If you like the card that we checked for this enhance, we can build stuff out. The ability to just like go positive on value by removing face downs that have already done their things, and to build in like powerful 2, 3 difficulty foundations. Like the ceiling on this card is very, very high. Enhance flip. If the top card of your discard pile is an attack, draw a card. So this card also has a conditional card draw attached to it. This is just a very promising value-based attack, even if the keywords don't quite line up as much as I would like. If we check a foundation for the attack, we can get rid of a used resource, probably a committed face down, and build in whatever we check. Hopefully a very powerful foundation, like a 2 or 3 diff. So in many situations, this move will effectively be closer to like a 3 difficulty move. If you check an attack, it'll hurt a bit if you're playing this deep into an attack string, but you can discard cards to help set up the other half of the effect and try to work to get both half of this card's effect. So even in those situations, it's very plausibly a good value machine. I think this card's going to take some experimentation to find homes, but it's a very promising card. It's probably, at least in my opinion, I think it's the best attack to come out of his lineup. Okay, now we have Plus Ultra Smash. This is a 5 difficulty, 3 control with a 2 mid block. It's a 5 mid 5 with Punch and Slam. First, enhance. If you have less foundations than your rival, unflip 1 foundation. This effect is going to be really inconsistent, but when it's live, getting to unflip and reuse foundations can be very powerful. A lot of foundations that flip for cost are kind of like one and done effects, so getting to recycle them is powerful, even if it's a little conditional. Response card pool, commit one foundation. At the start of the end phase, add this card to your momentum. I think Plus Ultra Smash is a reasonably statted punch, just as being like a 5-min for 5, but what's sick about this card is how it's always a guaranteed momentum, even if you block with it, as long as you have something to commit. Remember that anything that requires you to commit a foundation for cost, you can always commit your character. So if you haven't done All Might 6's commit to draw 2, discard 1, this is still an option available to you. Generally, we don't play attacks to block with them. It's kind of like a secondary thing if we have to. But I think this is a very big upside to blocking if we use this card to block. So it helps justify that a little bit. I think on good, this card's going to have a lot of competition because the good punch lineup is so saturated. But on order lineups, will probably take a nice long hard look at this card, depending on what kind of deck you're trying to build. Now we have Smashing Nomu. This is a 4 difficulty 3 control with a 2 low block. It's a 4 low for 3 with stun 1 and punch again. This card counts as having the word smash in its name. This is just useful for Smash Might. I think that's All Might 7, because I think Ball Might is All Might 5. Enhance, this attack deals damage, your rival commits a foundation. This gives it like an extra stun if the attack actually connects, which is a nice counterbalance to punish your opponent for just letting this 3 damage move connect. Enhance, discard 1 momentum. This attack's damage can't be reduced. This card's kind of a weird one. On one hand, you're almost always going to get some kind of stun 2 from this enhance, either from them passing their block and committing a card or 2 to pass their block, or if they just eat the damage, you still get the second stun. But most of these symbols are already flush with stun options, and I don't know if we need an attack that just provides like a pseudo stun 2, and that's pretty much it. I think long term this is one of those cards that people will experiment with, but over time it's just not going to make the cut. Okay, moving right along, now we have a Vanquishing Punch. This is our last attack in the lineup. It's a 5 difficulty 3 control with a 2 high block. It's a 3 low for 6 with stun 1, and again the punch keyword. Enhance, if your rival has 8 or more foundations, this attack gets +3 speed. Enhance, if this attack deals damage, discard 1 rival momentum. This card is exceptional as an opener for your attack strings in games that go a little longer, like on turn 3, turn 4 maybe. My issue with this card is how weak it is out the gate. Like baseline, this is just a 3 low 6 with actually no abilities besides stun 1. Because early on, your opponent's not going to have a momentum for you to mess with, and they probably won't have 8 foundations for the speed. So this card starts out as a very plain, vanilla, boring attack that does improve as the game goes on. I think if you're confident your character is going to push for like a longer game, you can maybe run a couple copies of these cards, but most of the time, I think this is just another attack that people aren't going to end up playing. I know I've been pretty harsh on All Might's attack lineup, but honestly, I'm just like not a big fan of most of these cards. Like, a lot of these symbols are already flush with very high quality attacks. The only symbol that might look at these a little bit is Order, but I don't know if we're going to see like an Order punch deck anytime soon. Especially when you have so many other very appealing punch-based symbols with things like Good, Earth, and All. Very promising symbols for all of them to do punch-based strategies. Okay, now we're going to get into some foundations, starting with Charging 1 for All. This is a 2 difficulty, 5 control with a 2 mid block. It's unique with really 1 ability most of the time, Enhance Remove. If you have less foundations than your rival, this non-throw attack gets +3 speed or +5 damage. It also comes with a Deadlock Enhance, where if you have less foundations than your rival, you can just snap a momentum. And there's no other cost to that, so this can generate a ton of momentum if your opponent goes into deadlock. So it is a very scary deadlock effect. Enabling yourself for stats is a tough sell, but charging does give us a lot of stats, and it's flexible whether we get speed to push damage or damage for a move that's already going to connect. My only issue with this card is that you need to have less foundations than your opponent, and that's not really like a consistent thing unless your character's like debuilding themselves. And if they are, I don't know if you want to run another card that debuilds yourself further. This is a weird foundation overall, and I think people are going to mess with it. And it had some potential. It's like a foundation that's almost more like an action. It's just going to need to find like a proper home, and I don't know if that home exists yet. This is a card to keep your eye on, I think. Okay, next up we have Determine. Determine is a 2 difficulty, 6 control with a 2 mid block and 2 enhances. First, Enhance Commit. If you try to block this attack with an attack or a foundation that shares at least 2 symbols with your character, your block modifier gets +0. This is a nuts ability, and I'll get into it after the deadlock. Deadlock Enhance, your Fury or Punch attack gets +3 damage. Ironically, I think Determined is probably one of the best cards to come out of the new Revel deck, as this provides an out to one of the biggest foundations of the game. Right now, aggro decks are kind of running all over the place, the highest levels of play, due to, I mean, a lot of things, but one of the major things is One with Nature, which basically jams your block modifier into the sky. Determined can set a block modifier 2-0 regardless of like what modifiers are on it. So this gives you some defense against One with Nature in addition to extra speed hate on these symbols. It is restricted to needing to match 2 symbols off your character, so this does impose a deck building restriction you're going to have to look at and build around. But this is still a very promising foundation that I think we'll see quite a bit of play. Okay, keeping the train moving, we're on Force to Revert. This is a 2 difficulty 5 control with a 2 low block. It gets -1 difficulty if you have less foundations than your rival. So early game, this will usually end up as a 1 difficulty foundation, and then it kind of turns into a 2 difficulty as the game goes on. This is still like a neat upside. Sometimes it counts as a spam, so you can kind of skimp on your 1 difficulties just a little bit. Response, Destroy. After your attack deals damage, add 1 card from your card pool to your hand. You cannot play attacks for the rest of this combat phase. If you squint, this card is a guaranteed attack draw on a destroy cost, which is very, very high like on rate. But the conditions around it are pretty awkward. You're locked out of attacking further on the turn, which hurts it quite a bit, and clearing your card pool will help smooth your building for the rest of the turn. But I don't know if players are going to be into a card that locks you out of attacking for the rest of the turn as a cost to drawing an attack. It's neat that it's sometimes a 1 diff, but I don't know if this card's good enough. Okay, next up we have Heroic Icon. Heroic Icon is a 1 difficulty 5 control with a 3 mid block with 1 enhance. Once per turn, discard the top card of your deck. If the discarded card is an attack, this attack gets +2 speed or -1 damage. I'm just going to come out and say it. I think this card is terrible in most decks. This requires you to specifically mill an attack, which usually means that you're going to miss. When you hit, it's going to feel like big value between clearing the 3 check off the top of your deck and getting the effect. But most of the time you're going to miss, and you have like a literally blank 1 difficulty foundation. And in some ways it's even worse than being blank because you're clearing a 5 off the top of your deck. Maybe if you're playing like a character that really cares about milling and getting certain cards into your bin for effects. But like even in All Might 6, this is probably one of the first foundations I would change regardless of like what symbol you were playing him on. I just think this card's very bad, and I don't think it's going to see any play long term out of like very niche strategies. All right, now we have Kindle the Flames. This is another 1 difficulty 5 control with a 3 mid block with a single response once per turn. After you block an attack, rate this card playable while committed. I think this card might see a little bit of play on All or Order as a spam foundation that helps you with like blocks because the card can re-ready itself, so it counts as like recursive speed hate. But good decks, if they're looking for an effect like this, will probably play High Value Target or any of their other very powerful 1-cost foundations. This card is a little bit better than High Value Target against like Mass Stun, but High Value Target is better against having your board destroyed. And the reality is that these symbols have such great spam foundations. Like honestly, their 1s and 0s are better than a lot of their 2s. So I think the bar for what you include is very high, and I just don't think Kindle the Flame is going to make the cut like in a lot of competitive lists, you know, long term. All right, keeping it moving, we have Now It's Your Turn, which reminds me of the stream event that I did. If you got anyone watching this caught that, this is a 2 difficulty 5 control with a 4 mid block. That really hurts. Enhance, add this card to the top of your deck. I guess that helps you guarantee you check 5s. Enhance, flip. This attack gets -2 damage. The next attack gets +4 damage. This is kind of a weird one. Both of the effects are just not good enough for my tastes, but I could see someone registering it depending on their attack lineup. Permanently debuilding myself to just guarantee a 5 on my next check is kind of useful only in very short-term scenarios, or if I'm very worried about being in deadlock. Giving attack -2 damage to get my next attack +4 is really only a good sell offensively if my opponent has is going to block this current attack and then can't block my next one. So that might come up if I'm playing something like a setup strike maybe, or a couple of cards that have effects like that. Or if my current attack has a lot of stun and my next attack is like a Texas Smash that I can pump speed on or something. Kind of very particular. Defensively, if you can't block an attack deep in a string, being able to just flip a foundation for -2 damage might save your life. So I don't hate this card. I think it's terrible, but again, it's got some competition. but I could actually see this card getting registered, at least here and there. All right, keeping this train moving, we only got 3 foundations left. Next up, we're looking at Public Support. This is a 1 difficulty 4 control with a 3 high block. Response: after this card enters your discard pile during the enhance step, your attack gets +1 speed and +1 damage. This is like a very powerful response. Enhance Destroy: look at the top card of your deck. You may discard 1 card and draw 1 card. This is a spam foundation that I think is going to end up seeing a lot of play despite the downsides to this card. You know, it has a 4 check, a 3 block is kind of rough. But we've already seen Destined for mainstream success be a popular choice for helping us like pass checks and smooth out our like turns. And this card has a similar effect with an extra upside of giving us +1/+1 to our attack. And it also pairs nicely with discard synergies. Like Deku 2, for example, can discard this card and in total give 2 speed and 4 damage to any punch, which is just a ton. I think there's going to have to be some experimentation for all of the different homes that you want to look for and find for this deck, but I could totally see this being a very powerful and popular foundation in some strategies, especially discard focused strategies. Okay, we're almost at the end. We just got 2 foundations left. We're looking at Raiding the Villain Hideout. This is a 3 difficulty 5 control with a 2 high block. It has the ally keyword, which is kind of nifty. Not too many things I care about that right now, but it should be noted that you can build this off of Summon Pigeon Flock. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. I think Summon Pigeon Flock is the attack. It'll be up on screen. Since it builds in an ally foundation, you can get some mileage out of this combination. As for what this foundation does, it has an enhance to flip and make your checks get +1 as long as ever checks for blocks for the rest of the turn. And then it has an extra enhance where you can discard a card and give your good attack 2 damage. I think this is a card you either play at like 3 to 4 copies of, or you don't play at all, due to the power of stacking this effect on critical turns. Raiding is a great tool when you need to stick multiple blocks in a turn, and using 2 on a turn where you would otherwise die can be the difference between you living or dying. And sometimes it can disincentivize your opponent from trying to go into you at all because of how much slower their attacks are, or more specifically, how much more likely you are to pass your blocks. The ability to discard for damage is a niche upside, but I mean, we've seen that come up before on other foundations. So if you're looking for discard outlets and don't have them, the fact that this card also has a discard outlet on it can be life-saving. That being said, I do think you're here mostly for the pseudo speed hate on this card, but the speed hate on it is very powerful, especially if you have like 2 or 3 of these out and you hit your opponent with all of them at once. Okay, finally we have You're Finished. It's a 0 difficulty 5 control with a 3 low block. Enhance flip: if the top card of your discard pile is a copy of this attack, draw 1 card. Deadlock enhance commit 1 rival foundation. Man, we just cannot get good solid zeros to save our life outside of it can't be fixed. This core effect is very, very unlikely to line up, which means most of the time this is going to be like a blank card. It is a good deadlock, but that's really not enough to like save this card. I don't think people are going to register this, and this is probably another one of those cards you upgrade and swap out as soon as you can. Okay, so let's get my closing thoughts on this. I think many of the cards here are going to show up in various lists across all of the different characters and symbols they can be in. As a whole, I think All Might 6 is a lot less impressive than his opposite in All for One. Many of these attacks and foundations are either very narrow and only for very specific strategies, or I just don't think they're good enough to see play like period long term. On top of that, I think just overall All Might 3 is a better version of All Might 6, which leaves All Might 6 a little out of place and without a home. The good news is that if you pick this up and you're starting out and you want to play with All Might 6, you have a lot of very clear upgrade choices, and one of those I generally think is just switching characters to All Might 3. He's like $1. So, you know, if you're watching this and you're trying to get started, consider swapping characters and practicing with All Might 3 over All Might 6, and I think you're going to have a much better time playing with the character. That's going to wrap up my thoughts for All Might 6, and as an extension, my thoughts on the new Rival deck. I think it's a really good product overall. This product, I feel, is far more beginner friendly in terms of what the decks and characters are doing than the first Rival deck that we got, and we are getting some good cards in it, mostly on the All for One side, but All Might 6 also has a few good cards too, so I think this would be a great product to pick up, and I will be opening one on camera when they come out. That's going to wrap us up for today, and if you made this far, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Once again, thanks for entering the chamber. Later, guys.